Let's go down to Matt Cesny. He's been stationed outside Ferguson PD for most of the night on South Florissant. Matt, we understand that police are now blocking South Florissant.
Yeah, Steve, it's very interesting. This is South Florissant. That's the Ferguson Police Department. And if you look down this way, this is facing south on South Florissant. Take a look at the line of police officers moving along the sidewalk. They stretch down, and then just past that Season's Greetings sign, they are stretched out across the road. And you can see these cars coming down South Florissant. They're coming down. They're being turned around. It's almost as if police are trying to seal off that section of Ferguson from anybody going down. We don't know if they're blocking pedestrians, but they certainly are blocking cars from getting down that way. That is the area beyond that police line where we saw a couple of police cars earlier burning. That's what we were told, and a lot of tear gas was dispersed down there. But clearly, the police have taken a position where they are not going to be allowing anybody to move south of the Ferguson Police Department along South Florissant towards any of those businesses that are located down there. The number of protesters here is significantly smaller right now, but that constantly changes. I have to say, people are constantly driving in, driving out. They'll pull up their cars, they'll get out, they'll take a look at the situation, they'll stand, they'll demonstrate along the sidewalk, then they'll get in their cars and move along. So it's a very fluid situation. You can hear some yelling going on behind me. There's still some angry people here as well. And that continues. And this line of police not moving. They remain out here right in front of the fire department and the police department. We'll keep following this for the latest developments. But as I said, it seems to be constantly changing here in front of the Ferguson Police Department. Steve, Sharon?
All right, Matt, thank you. We want to get right to Jillian Johnson. There are reports, and now we see the picture on the left side of your screen.
Let's go back up to the car.
The auto zone is now on fire. Julian.
The auto zone, there's multiple businesses along West Florissant that are on fire. This is just one of them. What we're going to do is take you on a little drive down West Florissant so you get a sense firsthand exactly what's going on. I'm going to take off a little bit here. There's been multiple small explosions coming out of this auto zone since we've been sitting here. Going to come out of the parking lot. We're on to West Florissant now. You can see just the amount of traffic already that's headed in the opposite direction of us. But here's an up-close look at the fire. This is at the Auto Zone on West Florissant. This is the New York Grill next door. We have seen some smoke coming out of there, but we haven't been able to see any flames just yet. I'm going to speed up here a little bit, get you to the next business. But again, you can see, look at this in the middle of the road. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but just a huge object that people have been hitting throughout the night. And up here at O'Reilly Auto Parts, completely engulfed. Look at this. The whole store basically gone. Intense blue flames my photographer and I saw coming out of here. You can still see it. The heat is just intense. You can feel it coming off, and we're sitting right in front of this thing. You can hear little explosions going off in the back.
We're seeing it firsthand. You're giving us, unfortunately, very vivid pictures of what's going on. There are parts of West Florissant right now that, for lack of a better phrase, look like a war zone. It look like bombs have been hit.
Steve, we got people with. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this in my life. You got emergency vehicles right here. There's a SWAT vehicles going. I'm trying to get out of their way right now. Going the opposite direction from where we just came. I'm not sure if they're going to those fires. There are people just out here watching all of this happen. It's unbelievable. It's indescribable. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Well, it's interesting, Julian. It's sad, but it's noteworthy that you say it's indescribable and that you're at a loss for words, because you were in the middle of all the protests night after night in August. In fact, there were times where you had to excuse yourself from being on the air because you were overcome by tear gas at times. So for you to be saying this is indescribable, you've not seen anything like it, that's saying something based on what you saw in August.
Oh, absolutely. I think you said it earlier, where we haven't seen the type of fires that we're seeing tonight that we saw the entire first time around. I think there was only, a handful of fires throughout the entire round one of this whole thing. But this round two, we just came down West Florissant.
Okay. Well, we have to cut the feed because of profanity going on in the streets outside of Julian Johnson's automobile.
I have to keep coming back to it. We spoke with police, as you said, many times leading up to tonight, asking them did they have the resources that they felt comfortable with to keep things under control, to keep people safe, demonstrators safe, property safe. But they could only do so much.
And I'm not sure, and again, anything was possible here. I'm not sure that this was the tactic. I mean, it's one thing for you and I to be surprised and overwhelmed. We're novices. We don't have any experience in law enforcement or putting a tactical plan together.
Sure.
But I have to think that maybe this has even caught them by surprise based on what they may have been expecting. We've seen one fire after another, and this seems in some way coordinated or choreographed.
Certainly does. Now, police also told us, though, Steve, they had intelligence. They knew about agitators. They knew about certain plans, and that they were working to quell those. But not the case in Ferguson right now. Things are definitely not under control. Let's get back to Julian Johnson, and I want to ask you about that, Julian. What are you seeing in the way of police resources? They talk so much leading into tonight about having the necessary resources. The governor issued that state of emergency, but it appears that things are just not coming together.
Well, Sharon, I think as we pass this AutoZone fire again, you can see again how intense everything is. But as far as to your question, I think police sort of want to, not to say let this happen, but they don't want to, put at risk a lot of officers. I mean, as you said, what's going on as far as the resources? We saw some officers guarding storefronts, so they're strategically placed. They're not just pushing in officers to get them in harm's way. They're putting them in strategic locations. We've seen them respond to certain areas when necessary. When you have a building burning like this, I guess, unfortunately, it's just a loss, and they move on to the next thing. And there's only so much that they can do and do it safely when it's a situation that's as out of control as this.
Julian, I think I think it's clear that the number one goal of all law enforcement here and heading into this situation, knowing that there would be some unrest following the announcement tonight, is the preservation of life. And it's not to say that what's going on is okay, but the preservation of life was first and foremost on law enforcement's mind as they came up with a strategic plan for tonight and for however many nights ensue.
Absolutely. I think that is the case, because if they come in here with a great show of force, which they obviously could do given the circumstances, there could be a potential great loss of life. If there's, someone in the crowd that fires at them and they fire back at whoever shot at them, things get even more out of control. So by taking a more hands-off approach, you at least alleviate the possibility of more people losing their lives. It's unfortunate that Mike Brown was killed, but you don't want to have even more people, lose their life as well by trying to rebel against the police. And that's kind of what would happen if they came in with, SWAT teams and stuff like that,
Well, and I also think it's going to change policing tactics moving forward. I mean, I know that the law enforcement, the Unified Command, was very serious about trying to agree to and uphold their agreement in as many of those rules of engagement as possible. But when you look at what's going on tonight, some of that goes out the window. Some of that in the future, in tomorrow night, and if they get things under control tonight moving forward, some of that goes out the window. Right now, moving forward, it's just whatever they have to do, not only to keep people safe, but to keep property safe as well. And unfortunately, for a lot of people that just want to protest and demonstrate, not do damage, not do bodily harm to anybody, I think the tactics are going to change, and I don't see how they can't after what we're watching unfold tonight.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously past the point of peaceful protest. These aren't the people out here trying to make a point on behalf of Mike Brown. These are people out here that are trying to, cause trouble. I think this man right here is trying to sell some of the stolen property from some of the beauty supply places that we've seen. So obviously he's not out here on behalf of Mike Brown. He may be out here, trying to do bad things. But obviously police aren't going to allow this type of activity to happen night after night after night. They're going to, obviously people are upset, really upset tonight that some people are really upset that Darren Wilson was not indicted. They're showing that, but over time police may have to have a heavier hand in order to get things under control quicker.
Indeed they may, Julian. There seems to be three different factions. You have the demonstrators who want their voices heard, agitators, and even spectators out there tonight as we track at least 7 business fires going in Ferguson right now. We're going to run down the list for you, but we do want to welcome in our viewers from CBS 46 in Atlanta, our sister station, Sharon Reed alongside Steve Savard. And let's run down the list of fires here. 7 businesses, 2 police cars. That began our evening, really, after the president spoke on South Florissant. Little Caesars out of control, also on South Florissant in Ferguson. Sam's Meat Market, Steve, on West Florissant.
We saw Walgreens on South Florissant, Public Storage fully engulfed on West Florissant, JC Wireless, Beauty Town. We saw heavy looting at O'Reilly's Auto Parts, Toys R Us. We saw looting at Walgreens as well.
We also saw AutoZone. That was the most recent fire, fully engulfed in flames. I believe we're going to go to News 4's Deanna Zoga right now. Deanna, exactly where are you and what do you see?
We're on West Florissant Avenue here, Sharon. This is just north of Ferguson Avenue. This has been a site of many protests from August on, but nothing like we've seen here tonight. Right now we're showing you a police line here on West Florissant. There's also several fires here burning, fires at businesses. Firefighters were out here for a time fighting these fires. They cleared out. Police have moved in. Firefighters have yet to move back in to fight these fires right now. If we can, we're going to show you one of the businesses here. It's a loss. It's destroyed. The roof has collapsed. This fire has just grown and grown here in front of us. At times we'll hear loud hissing noises, popping noises as the fire finds more fuel there inside that business. But that is just one of the businesses here burning on West Florissant. I see at least 2 here in front of me, 2 substantial fires here in front of me. Just to the north, there's a public storage building that is also on fire and has been burning for, I would say, at least the last hour out here. Police on scene, told that there are some groups of people just to the north of them. We did hear some commands earlier for people to disperse, but police are still holding that line. They have not moved from that line, I'd say, in the last 20 minutes or so. So we are just watching and waiting to see what will happen here. But if you can zoom back out, Brian, if this is just very telling of the situation here. You see that firefighters got out here. They hooked up their hoses to the hydrant, but then had to clear out. So the hoses are sitting there, but there's no one here to fight these fires here at the moment. Back to you.
Deanna Zoga reporting along West Florissant for us. And there lies the dilemma. You have police and their resources spread thin. And as Deanna showed us those hoses abandoned there out of necessity, firefighters battling all of these fires, and they simply cannot get to all of them. And then in other aspects, there are safety constraints placed upon them.
We saw protesters in South St. Louis tonight, shut down a section of 44 around Grand. Mostly peaceful protests. They dispersed when the police told them they would have to. They left the highway, allowed traffic to continue to flow, resume flowing, I should say, and then moved down South Grand. We saw the scene in Clayton earlier tonight, too. It was very quiet in Clayton. Businesses closed early in conjunction with Bob McCullough's announcement, which was that there would be no indictment of Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of Michael Brown. But we haven't heard anything from Clayton. Everything has been centralized, localized, the heavy stuff, the major damage, the fires being done in Ferguson, in and around Ferguson, 2 different places. West Florissant, where we saw so much of the activity, the unrest activity, the protests and demonstrations in August, and tonight also on South Florissant as well.
And leading into tonight, 108 days, approaching 109 since Michael Brown died, and so many meetings, so much planning, so much communication. Governor Nixon live on our air hours ago talking about what he wanted to see tonight, what he hoped to see tonight: tolerance, mutual respect, restraint. He had visited with Ferguson residents, said they were on edge, but he was hopeful. Religious leaders, he spoke to them, he said. He was focused on keeping the peace, protecting lives, property, free speech, even met with mental health providers and got them mobilized, as Alderman Antonio French had asked for 1 week ago, to try to get some understanding here, some peace, some calm, so people could have their voices heard, but not destroy their community.
We've seen it play out. We've talked about this. Seen it play out differently than we saw in August. We saw the street confrontations. We saw the escalation of emotion. We saw the anger. We only saw that for about 15 or 20 minutes tonight, really, centralized around the Ferguson Police Department on South Florissant. That's when tear gas started to be used. We saw fireworks being set off and everything else. You wanted
this from our Julian Johnson just seconds ago, reporting that SWAT team has now blocked off a portion of his area there, Steve, on West Florissant, where all those fires are burning, so many of them anyway, and perhaps that is their response to try to get some of these blazes under control.
Yeah, the focus from August, it's now shifted from the street confrontations to all these fires that are being set indiscriminately around Ferguson. We've seen several in South Florissant, several in West Florissant. That's the scene I believe Deanna was describing earlier, just a few minutes ago, on West Florissant, where you have hoses hooked up and no one right now manning the hoses.
We hate to say it, but we're wondering what happens next. Now remember, all of this kicked off. We had a peaceful evening up until the prosecutor stepped to the podium inside the St. Louis County Courthouse to deliver the news to Ferguson, St. Louis County, the country, the world, really, that Officer Darren Wilson would not be indicted in the shooting death of Michael Brown. Shortly thereafter, the family expressed their disappointment but called for peaceful protests. Officer Wilson's family issued a statement also calling for peaceful protests, but reiterating their feeling that the grand jury made a proper decision here. And then President Obama spoke to the country, also calling for peace.
I just want to jump in for a second, sharing some breaking news here. We're told there's police are responding to a one gunshot victim near the McDonald's on West Florissant. So one gunshot victim near the McDonald's on West Florissant. That McDonald's was the scene of a flurry of activity back in the first round of protests back in August. In fact, I believe in one of the first nights, the first week, that's where a couple of out-of-town journalists were detained and eventually arrested by police. That was early in the demonstrations following the shooting death of Mike Brown. But tonight we're told police responding, saying there's one gunshot victim near the McDonald's on West Florissant. That certainly is not good news.
St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCullough not only laying out the evidence, some of it, that the grand jury had gone over, several witness accounts that he said were completely debunked by the physical evidence, the autopsy findings, the recorded witness interviews the grand jury heard before the autopsy leaks. He said he hoped, and he acknowledged, this is a tragedy for the Brown family any way you slice it. But he had hoped that we could move forward, and the more information that gets released and the people who read it and deliver it and we report to will understand this grand jury decision. That does not seem to be the case, but we do have News 4 Investigates going over those documents, so many of them, Steve, and they are finding some interesting things. Yeah,
and I think two things to your point about the transparency, the attempted transparency following the grand jury decision. Number one, those are complicated documents. It's going to require some effort to get through all that and to highlight what you need to see. And the other part of the equation is there are some that just don't care about it. There are some, obviously, tonight that were bent on what you're seeing, on destruction and mayhem in and around Ferguson right now.
Yeah, you mentioned that because we have News 4 Investigate. We also have a team of supporting lawyers who are helping in that document, combing through the documents. But, you know, we had two lawyers on set with us who didn't really agree.
Well, did you notice that they didn't agree? Al Watkins
didn't really agree.
And
you know, Al took the approach.
Excuse me, Beth Orwick, who's with the St. Louis Circuit
Sure.
Attorney's Office.
Al took the approach that the grand jury in and of itself was different than anyone else would have been treated other than this officer. But of course, Beth said, no, this was a grand jury investigation.
That was the key
and
word
that's
she
the
was
difference.
using. Yeah, she said that we're also getting a report here. A U City police officer shot at Canton and Lamb, transported to an area hospital, condition unknown at this point. Police are looking for the suspect. Let me repeat one more time. A University City officer shot at Canton and Lamb, transported to an area hospital, condition unknown. Police looking for the suspect. We just got that information. That followed on the heels of the information we got from police that there was a gunshot victim near the McDonald's on West Florissant. So this night is turning violent, as we hoped it would not.
And we're working to get more information on that. We don't know if it's linked to unrest.
We
We don't know if
We
it's
don't.
linked to this grand jury decision announcement. We know nothing of that. But of course, late last week, federal officials did make several arrests, perhaps plots, targeting, in the wake of this decision pending, shall we say. So we'll work to get more information on that. Again, a U City police officer shot, transported, the location of the shooting.
Canton and Lamb.
And Lamb, and police working to find a suspect.
The headline you see on your screen is correct. Looting and at least 7 fires going on in Ferguson. We saw some unrest, at least some protests in South St. Louis tonight. Those were largely peaceful. You may not have been a fan of it if you were one of the
Caught in traffic.
men or women caught in traffic on 44 when it was shut down by the protesters. But from what we could tell, what Russell Kinsall and Ray Preston were reporting, that no damage really done to the cars, no bodily damage done, and the protesters there did disperse when asked, when demanded, when ordered by police.